Hi, this is Daniel Alpine, animation historian, and welcome to a new episode of Animation Memory Lane. When I first started my path as an animation historian when I was a teen, I first learned about a new project Disney was working on and actually saw now a very rare animation test for a new film based on the story of Rapunzel. And we all know the story of Rapunzel about a young woman trapped in a tower with no doors or stairs, with long hair that a prince climbed. Well, 3 years after I saw the footage is when the film was finally realized as Tangled. But the film had a very long history to it, no pun intended. And that's what I'll talk to you now about. Before we continue further, please remember to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe to the channel for more content. Similar to The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, and later Frozen, Walt Disney had the idea to adapt the story of Rapunzel as an animated feature film in the 1930s as one of his early list of films to adapt. But the problem was that this was a very static story once you get down to it. Sure, it's iconic and there's iconic images in it, but still, to adapt it to a suitable feature narrative proved to be difficult because all there is to it is a young woman with long hair in a tower and nothing really to do with that. And Walt decided to put it on the shelf. But in 1996, veteran Disney animator Glenn Keane decided to redevelop the idea while he was working on Tarzan. Glenn Keane was a Disney animator that first started in 1974 during production of The Rescuers, and soon he would climb the ladder to be one of the studio's top talents, where he had been the supervising animator of characters such as Ariel from The Little Mermaid, Marahute in The Rescuers Down Under, The Beast in Beauty and the Beast, which is considered his masterpiece, and of course Aladdin and Pocahontas. And what he saw in the story of Rapunzel was a story about a character that really had a deep desire that was waiting to be let out. And it was then he decided it would be his next project after his work on Treasure Planet. When he first pitched the idea at the time to Michael Eisner, it was approved because it was thought that perhaps this was what Disney needed during their slump in the 2000s. But it came with one condition. While Glenn had the idea for it to be traditionally animated as his work before, Michael Eisner said that he wouldn't greenlight it unless it was computer animated, and Glenn decided to follow through on that. The early version of the story, at the behest of Michael Eisner, was to be a more cynical and satirical take on the original story, and it was called Rapunzel Unbraided. The original version was to be about a modern day couple in San Francisco that magically was put into the story of Rapunzel. And that was the test footage that I saw in 2007. And while it was considered funny, Glenn Keane thought that this wasn't the right approach to tell the story, that it should be more, as he was taught by Eric Larson, sincere. And the film was redeveloped to be closer in tone to the original story. Initially, Glenn was supposed to be the director of the film, and what he had in mind was a more mature tone to the story. For example, instead of the now iconic frying pan that Rapunzel uses as her weapon of self defense, in the early version, she was to use a crossbow instead. But in 2008, Glenn had a non life threatening heart attack and had to step down from directing the film. And instead, it went to two new directors, Nathan Greeno and Bolt co director Byron Howard. But Glenn was still on board as one of the executive producers of the film, and he was also one of the animation supervisors. And what he did and what was his ambition was to bring the warmth of traditional hand drawn animation into computer animation. Part of the process was to achieve a look that looked similar to a classical oil painting. An example of that is The Swing. But also, Glenn would look over scenes that were animated as usual in the computer, but he would draw over certain scenes with a Cintiq to see what could be done better. And I don't think Glenn was aware of the time, but his process would have an influence over the look and design of future computer animated films during the 2010s and 2020s. That'll include short films such as Paperman, which used a new process to bring traditional hand drawn line work into computer models, and that'll be carried over into films such as Spider Man Into the Spider Verse from Sony Pictures Animation. When the new directors came on board, they decided to work out the story into a more lighthearted tone, and also that much of the film would be outside of the tower that Rapunzel was trapped in, and that what she really wished to do was to see these floating lanterns in the sky. Since the film was to be a musical, the studio brought back classic Disney composer Alan Menken to write the music for the songs and to also score the film. And this was different than what he did before with films such as Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. Alan described the score as a mix between classic medieval music with 1960s rock and roll. After all of this time of development and also a controversial name change from Rapunzel to Tangled, and also after being produced on a very expensive budget of $260 million, which still makes it the most expensive animated film ever produced, Tangled was released in November of 2010 to very good reviews, and was the first Disney animated film since Dinosaur to be one of the 10 most financially successful films of the year. While Princess and the Frog proved to be a modest success, Tangled was the film that truly sent Disney onto a new path of successful films with critics and audiences, which lasted from Princess and the Frog up until Frozen 2 in 2019. Tangled would also spin off into a TV series that aired on Disney Channel for 3 seasons, and I did see it from start to finish, and it was an excellent series. And after 15 years, the movie still holds up, and I still enjoy every minute of it. Oh, and remember to click on the link in the description to check out my article on my blog, Daniel Alpine's Animation Wonderland, to learn more about the making of Tangled. And, well, that's all for now. This is animation historian Daniel Alpine, and I'll see you next time.